Chris Lang is always entertaining and informative news and events. Writer covers the Liberty Flames for the paper. Joining on the Sports Buffet podcast earlier this week, we talk about Flames football and what could happen with conference realignment and such. That and much, much more. It's Chris Lang, News and Events on the Sports Buffet podcast.
Always a pleasure to have Chris Lang on the Sports Buffet podcast. Outstanding journalist for the News and Events, covering Liberty sports like no one ever has, ever will, or ever can. And Chris, let's talk some Liberty football. I don't know if we've even talked since the hiring of Turner Gill. Based on the spring practice, what has Turner Gill brought to this team that wasn't there under Danny Rocco?
It's really hard to tell that question, Bob, just because we didn't have the access to watch spring practice. We saw the spring game, which was very vanilla. I mean, that Turner was not going to show Jim Grove down at Wake Forest anything that he was going to do potentially in that season opener in September. So he kept everything pretty bland and whatnot. You know, from what I heard from some of the parents that were talking and whatnot, that the hitting during spring practice was way above where it was under Rocco, and a lot of that was guys probably trying to impress the new coaching staff. And I think him trying to instill some toughness. I don't know if he watched film and saw something he didn't like or whatnot, but I think that toughness was missing, especially on the defensive side of the ball. They struggled in big games continually under Rocco.
How odd is that for, like you mentioned, the media not to really have access to practice?
It's odd at this level. It's pretty common at the bigger FBS schools. UVA's, most of their practices were closed. Virginia Tech, I think, only opened 2 or 3 to the media. They gave you access at Liberty. You'd go out for the first 15 minutes where it was basically stretching. I mean, nothing was happening, so there was no point. That was just for the video guys to be able to go out and get something to go with their packages. But I think he just wanted to have a distraction-free camp. He didn't want to deal with people watching. And I honestly just don't think he wanted anything coming out of what specifically that they were doing. And generally, I mean, we don't report on the specifics of practice to begin with because far be it for me to think that I even understand half the stuff that's going on. That's why we always ask the assistant coaches questions, because they have a pretty good grasp of what's going on. They help educate us as much as, and then we try to educate the people that are watching out there through them. So it's odd at the bigger level, or it's more common at the bigger levels, but at the FCS level, it's kind of odd for everything to shut down like that.
I want to touch back on the spring game and everything, but you mentioned FCS, and I know Liberty has the committee looking into the going FBS. Where does that stand right now, and what is, I believe it's the Carr Sports Group, what are they telling Jeff Barber and crew?
I don't know the specifics of that yet because they haven't really talked publicly about it. My understanding was that they were to present the study yesterday on Monday to the Chancellor, and then they were going to talk about it publicly at some point here this week. I think from Liberty Football Week, the tweet last week that said FBS ready, so I think we know what the study's going to tell them, that they are ready, but now you have to wait for a conference invite and everything to move up, because you certainly just can't move up as an independent. And, I don't even think by NCAA rules you're allowed to move up as an independent. I think you can't move up unless you have a conference home. I might be completely wrong about that, but I think I remember reading that somewhere. So hopefully later on this week we'll find out something a little bit more concrete about everything that was told. But it definitely they've got the infrastructure in place. They've got the facilities. They have the infrastructure in terms of the amount of sports that they need, both on the men's and the women's side. The Title IX compliance is in order. So at this point, I think they're going to say they're ready to go, and now you got to wait around and see who wants to pick them up.
How do you see conference alignment shaking down in terms of, I hear a lot about the Big East and everything like that, in terms of maybe they're going to split off, and people like Georgetown and folks like that who don't have a football team would kind of go into their own conference. In terms of Liberty, though, a lot of names I've heard bannered about are maybe somehow with a Sun Belt type of thing, or, let's be honest, Liberty's not going to get in the ACC. They're going to have to look for a smaller FBS conference. Where do you see that fit maybe coming?
Well, just correct real quick, Georgetown does have a football team. They play in the Patriot League.
Mm-hmm.
They're FCS, but I know what you're talking about. The Catholic schools, so to speak, in the Big East, with Seton Hall and St. John's and Providence, those guys. Not
but Georgetown's not looking to hit their program to the FBS level, if I'm not mistaken.
No, Lord, no.
Right.
Nor is Villanova at this point. Those are the two that are in the Big East
right.
for all sports that have football teams playing at the FCS level. With Liberty, I don't know. The Conference USA is probably pretty much out of the question at this point because of that they've picked up, and I think they'll be at 13 or 14 teams coming into the 13th season. So, honestly, really the only places I could see LU getting looks from are the MAC and the Sun Belt. And the Sun Belt right now, I looked at it yesterday, I think they would be at 10 teams 2 or 3 years down the road once they add Georgia State and South Alabama gets up to speed. It's interesting. It all depends on where they want to expand their footprint and what kind of television revenue you can get from picking up these teams. The Lynchburg-Roanoke market, I think, is number 66 or 67.
Right in there, yeah.
Yeah, it's not a huge market, and it's a good thing that Lynchburg and Roanoke are grouped together in that regard for their purposes, because if it was just the Lynchburg market, I'm sure we'd be in the 140s or
right,
something.
yeah, at best.
Yeah, so, that's, you can have all the facilities in the world and everything, but it's like, what do you bring to the conference, and why would the Sun Belt necessarily want to come all the way up to Virginia, where they don't really have, they did pick up Charlotte, so that is a positive in that regard for LU, is at least there's somebody reasonably close now that'll be a football. I'm sorry, they didn't pick up Charlotte. Conference USA did. I got confused. See how confusing this is?
You really need a map or an encyclopedia or something to keep up with everything. Go ahead.
The MAC's kind of interesting. Only I haven't heard anything specific from or read anything anywhere saying that the MAC would be interested, but they are losing Temple starting this year, so they're down to 12 football playing members. They were up to, I think they were up at 13. They're down to 13 because UMass put them to 14. So would they want to look at, they've looked at Youngstown State a number of times in the past, and I don't know if they think Youngstown really brings them much of anything, because they've already got, Akron and Ohio U on that side of the state, and Akron's pretty close to Youngstown, so you're not really gaining much of anything there. And so I don't know. It's just going to be interesting to see how it all shakes out. It's going to take some patience. I just think that fans want it to happen immediately, and it took the last 3 or 4 years. Liberty really had nothing to bring to an FBS league, and now they do in terms of facilities and whatnot. And it's just, I think it's taken a while for the school to sell everything. I'm pretty sure there's a lot going on behind the scenes that I don't know about, that the public doesn't know about. I know Jeff Barber's working diligently to try to make the schools appealing as possible to prospective members. It's just, I think that people want to hear public news, and LU doesn't gain anything by leaking what they're doing publicly. In fact, they probably hurt themselves. So I understand why they keep it under wraps and don't want to talk about it.
Are there more FCS schools looking to go FBS, or do you know?
Well, I know Appalachian State is, and it was weird. I just read something this morning on Appalachian State's website. Their athletic director posted a note to the boosters and everything, basically saying, look, our feasibility study said we want to move up, but we're not getting the bites that we want to. So it makes me think that the Sun Belt was passed on them because of they're in a much more geographically remote location than Lynchburg is even. It's easier to get to Boone than it used to be. They've got multi-lane highways up there, and you can fly at least up to Hickory, and it's not too far of a drive from there. But they're encountering those problems. I still think James Madison wants to move up. I don't think you build a 25,000 seat stadium to stay in the CAA, especially the way the CAA may end up blowing up with losing George Mason and VCU, which I know are not football schools, but that would really hurt the footprint of that league in general. They've already lost UMass. Old Dominion is, I think, eventually interested in moving up to. Georgia Southern has looked into it. Jacksonville State down in Alabama certainly has looked into it. So there are a lot of schools out there, and we'll have to see what happens with the various leagues and see how far they want to expand. And quite frankly, the WAC is interesting too, because they're going to be down to 2 teams, and for football, Idaho and New Mexico State really have no place to go, and you really can't play with a football league with 2 teams. So do they get creative and start going, well, we need to pick up all these East Coast schools and rebrand our conference now an Eastern Division and a Western Division, and just to stay alive. So who knows? That could happen. I haven't heard any rumbles about that either, though. It's really tough to get a read on some of this stuff when you're not plugged into the conference offices, and I sadly am not plugged into the Sun Belt and Conference USA and WAC offices.
Not yet, but who knows? One day, maybe. Let me touch on a few more things before we get back to actual football topics. I'll kind of ask this as a 2-part question. One, would it behoove Liberty to try to get an Appalachian State or somebody has? I've heard the term traveling partners to maybe join another conference is like, hey, you take one of us, you get a twofer. And also, I know Liberty kind of has that loose deal with Masson in terms of getting a lot of their games replayed, and I know they have the Liberty channel with all due respect, I don't know how big of a gain that is, but with Masson, does that help at all in terms of Liberty's notoriety and publicity in terms of getting in a decent conference?
I don't think it hurts, and I think the in-house network doesn't hurt at all either, because a lot of those games end up getting picked up by ESPN3.com.
Right.
So, yeah, you could see pretty much any LU sporting events, or football or men's basketball games for the most part that are played at home that FSN is doing. You can find it on ESPN3, that's a huge bonus for them. And I think when that they've got some notoriety out there that doesn't hurt. I don't know how much it absolutely helps, but I know the Sun Belt's trying to negotiate a better TV deal and get their games on something resembling regional, other than just that Tuesday night game that they get, which is, I don't know how many people watch. I don't know about you as a football fan. I'm worn out on it by Tuesday. It's the last thing I want to watch on a Tuesday night is a football game.
Right. My week normally starts Thursday.
Exactly. I want to take you. Heck, even sometimes by the Monday night football game, I'm done with
right.
it. Like, we need a couple of days away from it just to regain the excitement. That's the beauty of football. It's a weekend sport, and there's the ebb and flow with the college game on Thursday, or your prep games on Friday, and your college games on Saturday, and pro games on Sunday. That's where you start getting into those Tuesday games. It's just weird to me. But digressing from that, that's certainly having the TV presence can help. Having the infrastructure on campus to get that out helps. They've got an experienced crew that knows how to do games, so I don't see where that can hurt them in the long run.
And the other part of the question of maybe pairing up with an Appy State or somebody has a twofer in terms of you take one of us, you get both of us. Does that help or no? Not really.
It could help. Certain schools really want that, and that's the thing with Liberty is that they've got so much money now over there that I don't know how concerned they are with having a travel partner or having somebody close to play. This is a school that goes the night before games, and I'm not sure if Radford comes over here the night before the game and stays in a hotel in Lynchburg, but for basketball. But I know Liberty goes over there and treats it like they treat Radford, even though it's an hour and a half to 2 hours away, like it's Charleston Southern. We're going to get there a day early. We're going to practice over there. So I don't know if that's a concern to them. For the leagues, though, I could see that. Some of these leagues are so far flung to begin with. You got Conference USA, where East Carolina's playing Texas El Paso in volleyball, a conference match, and you're going, what's going on with that? We're sending our volleyball teams 3 time zones away to play. So,
well, that's my next question, too. I mean, do you think these conferences are going to get to a football-only conference and then, we have everything else? Or is it – I mean, because, I look at the Big East, which I know is San Diego State and Boise State, I believe, are just going for football. But, even the ACC, when you're sending men's tennis from Boston College down to, Florida State.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah, like you said, you're already seeing that with Boise State going, there's no way we're making our volleyball teams go play Connecticut and Louisville in
right.
conference matches.
Right.
So they're in the WAC, which is for all sports. That's the thing. This thing may still blow up again with the way the WAC is imploding. I wouldn't be surprised if Boise State and San Diego State ask out of that Big East alignment now and go back to the Mountain West, which all of a sudden looks like a very appealing destination.
And, I think one day it would be fun to get you and Nathan and maybe Justin along and talk about major college conference realignment, because I remember telling a friend or two at one point, I see 5 or 6 conferences one day being 16-team conferences, and then everybody else. Everybody else just fights for their own right, but,
Yeah, I've heard that too, but the only thing is that I just don't think the Big Ten wants to go there. They're so snotty about that's a better term of word, about the academic institutions that they want in their conference, that they're not just going to go snatch up random schools to fill out the 16. So they're kind of, I think the Pac-12 is kind of the same way, unless they could have gotten Texas and Oklahoma, and then what's the point of expanding any further for them? And I think they're already reaching a little bit with Utah.
Right. Well, I hear what you're saying, but money can yell. So
this is true. And the Big Ten was the most traditional of leagues for the longest time, and then they realized how much money they could make from a conference basketball tournament and started one, and they realized that they could make it from their football championship game and went to it. But you get a chance to pick up in Nebraska. That screening to pick up Iowa State.
Right.
Strangely enough, it's a much better school than people give it credit for.
Well, let's conclude with a few Liberty questions, and like I said, we'll talk about that college realignment and everything down the road. Who do you give the edge to be the Flames starting quarterback, and how different is the Flames offense? I know the system that Turner Gill and Danny Rocco have used are going to be a little bit different, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they're going to be different. A lot of that has to do with personnel. And, Danny adapted his offense to Mike Brown's talents when he was here. If you remember when Tommy Beecher was a quarterback or Brock Smith was a quarterback, they weren't running that read option stuff all the time. I mean, there was some drop-back passing, and there was that sort of thing. So, Turner wants to do multiple things. He wants some read option looks. He wants some shotgun looks. He wants some under center looks. He wants some pro-style smash mouth running balls. So you'll see a lot of different things. And as far as starting quarterback goes, it's a two-man race between Brian Hudson and Josh Woodrum, the redshirt freshman out of K-Spring. Both really good in the spring. It's kind of sad for Tyler Brennan, but he's had multiple chances. He had his chance against Kentucky Wesleyan when he had a chance to start last year, and was underwhelming. I mean, he wasn't bad, but he wasn't great either. Been injured a lot, and Turner gave all three of those guys a fair shake in the spring, and he decided to narrow it down to two. Between those two, I don't know. Both of them bring something different. Hudson, it looked really good in the spring game in terms of just making the basic plays, which is really all you could see with what they were doing. It's better than what we saw from him when he got a chance to play at Charleston Southern last year. But that's how much you throw on the ball when you're up 38-0 at halftime. It's really tough to judge him on that one game. So he's got a really strong arm. He's a really strong kid. I think he set the quarterback bench press record at LU. And Woodrum he's got a lot of talent. There's a reason why ACC schools were interested in him out of high school, and so I think those two will have a pretty good battle going on once fall camp opens.
Do you think either one makes a difference? If you start one as opposed to the other, it's a 2 or 3 win difference, or do you think it could be almost maybe the same in terms of the W's? It's just going to be what style or kind of the strength, if I'm making sense.
Yeah, I don't see one of them as considerably better than the other. I think that's kind of what you're asking,
yep.
And it's really hard to judge what this team's gonna look like just because you haven't seen it yet. And their receiving core is going to be very young, aside from Pat Kelly and Ryan Ferguson. Those two guys are coming back, but they're replacing a lot of yards and touchdowns between BJ Hayes, Chris Summers, and Irvin Garner from last year. So they'll have that to work with. And the schedule is difficult to start the year. When you start the season at Wake Forest, home against the Norfolk State team that went to the playoffs last year, and at Montana, that's as tough a slate as they've had since I've been here, for sure. I mean, aside from last year's, it's pretty difficult as well. But honestly, that Norfolk State game is probably one they should win. It's pretty similar to Robert Morris last year, where they had a really good run, really good team, went to the playoffs, lost a lot of players from that team. So they should win that one, but otherwise, the schedule's very difficult.
Give me something that could be a concern that most people may not think of has a question mark with this team.
Well, the running backs are a little bit of a concern just because they never really got going last year. So they ran the ball so much with Mike Brown, it was really hard for Chauncey Holloway and Aldrecus Allen to get going, and Des Rice. So that could be a little bit of a concern. I think the receiving core, as I mentioned before, other than Pat Kelly, I mean, somebody else is going to have to step up. Some of those freshmen that are coming in are going to have to work their way up the depth chart and make an impact, because Pat Kelly is going to get the Chris Summers treatment next year. Everybody's watched the film and realized that he's faster than most people think. He jumps really well. He's undoubtedly the best receiver they have coming back, and he's going to be treated accordingly by defensive coordinators. He's going to get blanketed a lot, so somebody else is going to have to emerge there. Certainly the offense is well lagging behind the defense at this point, and the defense is probably going to have to keep them in games early on because they're really fast and good on that side of the ball.
Final question for you, Chris. As always, enjoyed talking to you. We'll do it again much more frequently here coming up. I know quite a few guys from Liberty have gotten some free agent signings or whatnot in the NFL, Mike Brown being one of them with the Jags, Summers with the Bears, I believe, and I know there are a couple others that you'll you'll pitch in for me. But who can you actually maybe seeing get on that opening day roster and at worst practice squad, and how many of these guys do you think would have a tough time making where they are right now?
Well, I think the guy that's got the best chance is Mike Brown, to be honest with you, because, and we talked about this last year when I did a story on him in the preseason, talked a lot with him about, he understood that he's not going to be a quarterback at the next level. He didn't take that as bashing him. He's just 5'11", and they listed him at 6 foot, but every time you talk to Brandon Streeter, the old offensive coordinator, he would call him 5'11", so that tells you how tall he is. 5'11" quarterbacks don't make it in the NFL. It just doesn't happen. So that's why he had that skill set that he was able to display over 4 years. He showed the ability to return kicks, showed the ability to return punts, to catch passes. And in the NFL, it's a roster game. It's a numbers game. There's 52 men on a roster, and if you're a guy that can return punts, return kicks, act as a third or fourth receiver, and be a special teams gunner, you're really valuable because you're holding down 3 or 4 positions with one roster spot. So he's the sort of guy I think that's probably got the best chance of all of them to make it. Chris Summers, he's got the talent. I'm curious to see how it shakes out in Chicago. He kind of fell off the map in terms of the NFL draft looks, and I'm not quite sure why. I don't know what the scouts saw when they came through the building this year, if they didn't like his work ethic or his strength or anything like that. But it's tough to judge him on his strength because he spent the entire year with a torn pectoral muscle, so I don't believe he was able to bench or do a whole lot of weight workouts this year. So trying to think of the other guys. BJ Hayes signed on with Tampa Bay. I'm not sure what his chances are. I mean, he's the same sort of guy as Mike Brown, though. He's probably going to get a lot of special teams looks, and that'll be his ticket to trying to make that team.
Let me touch on Mike Brown real quick too. You mentioned the fact that he kind of knew he wasn't going to be a quarterback at the next level, and I think if a lot of people kind of realized that, they might actually have a little bit of an NFL career. And I'm not calling out Tebow per se, but I mean, guys like I think Brad Smith and Seneca Wallace and everybody still thought that they could play quarterback a lot in the NFL, to where they'd probably been better suited at another position. Do you think that's Mike Brown just having common sense, or is that Mike Brown maybe because he didn't play at a quote-unquote big school, he kind of realizes that?
Yeah, I think it was common sense. He's a smart kid. He knows that his strengths were his quickness, his speed, and his ability to play multiple positions. He would be the first one to admit that he's a competitor like that, but he made a lot of bad decisions last year at the football. As much as he won 7 games for him last year, he probably lost all 4 of the games for him last year as well, especially the Lehigh game where he fumbled the ball at the end. So I just think, I think he just understood that the chances of a 5'11" quarterback from a smaller school of making it in the NFL at that position wasn't going to happen. So he worked on a lot of different other things and tried to better himself and show himself out for scouts. I know that they had highlight tapes of his game at West Virginia where he caught 160 yards worth of passes and had a couple of huge kickoff returns, and they certainly were trying to accentuate the positives he could bring to a team. I just think he realized that it was going to be very difficult to try to make it as an NFL quarterback, so try to sell yourself in the best way possible.
You mentioned the NFL draft. Were you around here when Bobby Massey played at LCA?
I was, but it was really brief, and I don't ever remember seeing him play there. Didn't he only play there for a year?
Yeah, I think
he played there too.
Well, I think he might have played there a couple years, because originally I think he was a freshman at like Appomattox or something.
Yeah.
I was just going to ask, I don't know how much you even know or whatnot, but Kuiper had him on the big board as best available for quite a while, on at least at lineman, and he didn't go till day 3.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened with him or whatnot, but actually now I come to think about it, I did see him play once for LCA. I think I remember talking to him actually, but yeah, no idea what happened there with him, so I wasn't paying all that much attention to what was going on with him.
Well, that's okay, because I think he went to, if I'm not mistaken, Ole Miss, and you're not the Ole Miss beat writer, so maybe we should check with him. Anything else going on in the world of LU that is pertinent to any conversation before we wrap up?
Just the big baseball series at home this weekend will be the last hurrah for Worthington Stadium, at least for baseball, as they will move to the new facility next year. They get a High Point team that's really fallen apart lately. I think they just got swept by UNC Asheville. They got off to a great start, but they had a couple of injuries, and LU's really trying to just get their feet back underneath them after getting swept by Coastal. Tim Dudley and Andy Smith back, and even better, Michael Robertson. They're going to be dangerous in the tournament if they can get healthy. But the expectations just got so out of whack early on because they got off to that great start against a kind of a soft schedule, and then guys started getting hurt. And you take the best two hitters out of anybody's lineup at this level, they're going to struggle, and that's what happened to LU.
What's normally the kind of pitching strategy for a Big South tournament where I believe it's, correct me if I'm wrong, double elimination?
It is double elimination. They switched up this year, though, so they're playing in the College World Series style instead of having that wacky. Before they did it where the 6 teams, the top 6 teams were, the top 4 teams were guaranteed into the double elimination bracket, and then teams 5 through 8 had to play a single elimination to get into the 16 bracket. They're doing it now. The top 8 teams make it. Your number 1, your 4, your 5, and your 8 seed are in one side. 2, 3, 6, and 7 are in the other. And then you play just 4-team double elimination tournaments, and the winners meet for a winner-take-all game on Saturday. So their goal, I think, in the next couple of days is, or the next couple of weeks, is obviously to try to find a way to finish second or third in the conference, because Coastal's going to win it. And I know Coastal just lost their best pitcher, but when you've lost to a team 16 times in a row, the thought of trying to beat them twice to eliminate them in a 14 bracket is a little daunting. So I think they'd rather have the opportunity to just play them once in a championship game than trying to have to knock them out in that first round.
Well, and from what I know of college baseball, once you get into a double elimination tournament, it always seems like you want to get that first win, so that's almost where you throw one of your big guns, if not your ace, in that first game, just to make sure.
Oh, absolutely. And Coastal's without their ace. Josh Conway got hurt at Liberty in his first game. He's got just a bad arm, is what Gary Gilmore said, and so Coastal's pitching depth is going to be tested a little bit. They still have the best ERA in the nation, so they're still a very good team and have a very good pitching staff. But you'd certainly much rather have to be in a bracket with Charleston Southern and Gardner Webb than deal with having to try to eliminate Coastal, and probably a pretty good 5th place team as well.
Chris, as always, we appreciate the time. Look forward to doing it again very soon.
All right, thanks, Bob.
Chris Lang on the Sports Buffet.